Marvelous. All right, right. Hold on 1 second. So we're very fortunate to have. Um, Excellent. Okay, so we are actually now fortunate to be joined by another very lateral thinker, another person who thinks outside the box, a globe trotter, and we've been fortunate to have him here in the Bluegrass area at Airdrie since 2008. So I'd like to introduce Ben Henley, who's the general manager of Airdrie, and is going to tell us some things again that will shape our sort of concepts. Thank you, Ben.
No worries. This one over here.
Yes, please.
Right, so yeah, thank you for the introduction. We foal about 160 to 180 foals every year. This year we started off pretty well for the first 10, and then the next 6 to 8 all got the diarrhea at 36 hours of age, up to 72 hours. They were off the suck. We had some colic, no fever. We also, around that time, was right after the ice storm, had some of the older foals break with diarrhea as well, that we kept up during that ice storm, which I regretted afterwards. So obviously we're all concerned, was it the staff contaminating the foals, or was it environmental? Was it our barns? So as for probably the last 7 years, we've been giving all the foals metronidazole as a blanket for 7 days, twice a day. We're worried, it's obviously not working because we've got diarrhea. And is it because we're handling these foals twice a day, touching their faces and mouths, that we're contaminating them? So we stopped this practice immediately. We then, after talking to Emma, one thing that really stuck with me was, I was like, how do we stop this bug? And the one thing she mentioned was UV light. So I was like, oh, well, there's one way to do that. We can, think about doing some outdoor foaling, which we hadn't really done before at Airdrie. There was a bit of resistance as a manager from our kind of upper level management about doing that, because we weren't set up for it at all. And it was obviously going to cost some money. So this diagram gives you a bit of an idea of our setup. So our foaling barn here, we foal everything in that foaling barn in 3 stalls, that's a lot of foals through 3 stalls. We had a couple of small paddocks next to it that we've always used for the day-old foals. And then probably the afternoon after they're born, if everything's good, they'll ship off to a nursery barn. What have I done here? There we go. So what we did was we divided the paddock there into quarters right next to the foaling barn. They're about 100 feet each. And then to the paddock to the left, we just divided that one in half, with the idea being foal them in the smaller paddocks. And then the next day, after they've had their new foal exam, enema, etc., we'd move them over into those bit bigger ones. So we could keep an eye on them the next night. And much like Jerry did, once we'd done the new foal exam, the rule was do not touch them, do not go near them. You can go feed the mare, check the water, that's it. We also spent quite a bit of money on putting up some big LED lights. I went for ones that would kind of light up a soccer field or a Kroger car park. So they were quite good. One thing I kind of messed up, you'll see here, I divided the paddocks horizontally there. I should have done it diagonally, because once the nighttime came, you couldn't really see that back paddock. So then, just to explain kind of how our foals rotated then after they were foaled, they were obviously foaled in those green paddocks, and then we would leave them in those blue paddocks up until about 5 to 7 days. Hopefully we could keep them a bit longer, get them to foal heat, but then they would go off into the bigger paddocks. There's a little picture of some of the one of the foaling yards after it was done. One thing we did too was we kept all the paddocks really well picked and cleaned. We also, it was a little tough on the staff too. the mares, it took a little while for everyone to get used to foaling them outside. Mares can be a little bit more aggressive. They were getting distracted a little bit more easily. You know, they'd hear a coyote or something like that. So that was tough on our staff initially, but it was better than running fluids into foals all night long. There's those LED lights we put up on the barn. Our barn's a little lower than where those paddocks are, so we had to put some poles up to get them up high enough. Costs for doing that there. It cost us about 20 grand overall. But I think the first foal we sent into the clinic, our bill came back at about 7 grand, so it was pretty easy to justify it, especially when we had over 100 still to come. Going forward, I think we'll definitely be looking to foal outside. The start of next season is probably going to be a bit interesting. You know, we bred a little bit later this year. It was probably February 28th. We're going to definitely move that back this year coming. I really enjoyed the foaling outside, which I'll get to here in a minute. We probably also need to do a bit better pasture management in those small paddocks. We haven't fertilized or seeded them for years, but we really kind of hammered them this year, so we're going to have to get a bit more aggressive with that stuff. Disadvantages, yeah, some of the mares got more aggressive towards us. It's harder to get near them to check on them and whatnot for the night stuff. Our PPE costs were going up, so we went actually to, and I was a bit suspicious that, you know, those plastic gowns that everyone puts on that are actually covering people properly. So we just went to buying plain old overalls that you can wash. The rule was, you know, you foal a mare, wash it, or if you handle a foal the next morning for the new foal exam, take it off and wash it. Because I was very suspicious about it being transferred by people. The weather was a bit of a problem. Jerry was talking about those storms we had in March and April. We had one foal that we left out on a very cold, rainy night. There was 3 of them actually. And I was quite worried about it, stressing them out. We had one of those foals break with diarrhea at 72 hours. Of course, it was the expensive one. So that was a little bit of an issue. We also needed an extra person to help foal. We still had the mares in the barn. So when they went to break water, then we would take them out to foal. So we normally have 2 people on. We had to put a 3rd person on, so 2 could foal and 1 could still be in the barn watching the rest of the mares. The advantages were a lot less mucking out and straw and whatnot. One thing I found interesting was those foals that are contracted or really relaxed in their tendons seem to resolve quicker being out in a small paddock, just getting that exercise. It's probably a bit easier for them to get up as well. We did have 2 foals that we had to bring back inside after they were born because they were so contracted, so we could red boot them and LA 200 them. Both those foals got diarrhea at 36 hours. The fractured rib argument came up pretty quickly. What are we going to do with these foals? We left them all out, but we did leave them in small paddocks for 14 days just to make sure, but we didn't have any issues. The other thing I thought was interesting was when we went to turn the mares out in the big fields, they were a lot more relaxed. There was a lot less running going on. So I'll be interested to see what our x-rays look like in the spring, whether we've got those elongated sesamoids or not. That's about it. I think it's going to keep evolving, but I think we'll probably keep on foaling outside, especially once later in the year. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer later.
Very good, very good. Fantastic, thank you, Ben. It's my pleasure now to introduce, let me just make sure I'm in the right place, to introduce Leo Dooley. Leo is a young man who originates from Ireland. He did the National Stud course over in Ireland and has worked various places since then. And he has now set up his own farm And so obviously he has borders and suffers all of the issues that we suffer when we start out on a project. So I thought it would be wonderful. Ben did a great job this season, keeping things under control with biosecurity, and talking with him recognizes that biosecurity and prevention are really leadership issues. So Leo, come on down, and I'm afraid you'll just have to be pressing the button there.
That's fine. Thank you, Emma. I do have to say I can't give too much credit to the National Stud course. I skipped that part, but I did graduate from University College Dublin.
Sorry.
And no, that's fine. So where am I going to start? So we've gone over rotavirus and its pathogenesis and how we deal with it on the farms. And the one thing we did establish was it's super contagious. You see one statistic here, up to 100 billion particles per gram of feces. So it's outrageously contagious. I can switch to for 9 months. So, we're a very commercial farm. We don't have a huge budget. We're on shoestring budget. We take borders. We're open for business, so we had a lot of traffic coming through, and we're kind of worried about that, especially when we started hearing about all these farms having trouble, middle of February. So when we started hearing about that, we really started locking things down. We were only taking client Merciful out from herds we trusted, that were well, obviously it came with great vaccination records. And yeah, so I'm here to talk about our biosecurity protocols, which we pushed on. My main thing was to protect my foaling barn. At the time, I only had one foaling barn, and I was just so afraid if we got this new, it turns out we rotavirus B, but at the time we thought it was Clostridium. If we got it in, we'd never get it out. So my big thing was protect your foaling barn at all costs. So we boosted up the biosecurity. We've all talked about the PPE, everything that goes with that. So yeah, our standard protocol was for 5 days after the mare foals. You have your gloves, boots. They have their own thermometer. Because we didn't have any diarrhea at the time, we did use our foaling stall. It was going well. We didn't change that. Obviously, as the weather started to get better, then I was more comfortable to start foaling outside. So we used the gloves and the boots and the PPE. But one thing I did find great was I had one girl designated to, cleaning all the high traffic areas, Clorox wipes and all the stall pins, door handles. That was done every single day. And I gave her a lot of credit for that. And she too also did the foaling stall. So every time a mare foaled, she would go in there and she would scrub it with laundry detergent, get it good and foamy, clean it down. And then she'd come in behind that again and spray it down with disinfectant. And we'll touch on this again later too, but she did make sure that the disinfectant was the proper concentration. A lot of people just dunk it in there and think, oh, the stronger the better. And really all you do is you end up burning the soles off your shoes. So that's that. This one down here. So yeah, about cleaning the foaling barn and stuff. No such thing as one-step cleaning. It's more of a process. There's a good stat here that says physically removing the organic material can decrease pathogen load by 90%. That's huge. There's a lot of places that, you'll just go in there and they'll spray their disinfectant all over the place, maybe on a watering can, they'll swirl around in the air and think they're getting everything. It's a waste. It's a waste of time. Get in there with a good brush, scrub it up, use a detergent to foam up that organic material, get it off of there, come in with some clean water, wipe that down, then come in behind with the disinfectant and go after it. And, because we were only foaling out about 35 mares, so we had time to really go after our foaling stall and make sure it was clean, give it time to dry. You know, it's not like we had another mare. You know, there are times we did have mares actually that were needed the stall, but it was in the April time and we could foal outside. But in the slow period, January to end of March, we had time to go after our foaling stall aggressively. And we did not pressure wash it once. It was all done, scrubbed with just an old hard brush that you'd use for brushing out mains. Bit of elbow grease. So yeah, no pressure washing because, you know, we kind of think that's going to aerosolize the fomites. It's going to pass, it's going to, you know, breeze comes through the barn, it blows everywhere, and next thing you're contaminating every other stall. So we stayed away from pressure washers. We stayed away from blowers too. We just used more of sweeping brushes. Again, more elbow grease, but kept the dust down in the barn. And seemed to work fine. So yeah, this is going back to the disinfectant. Just make sure you read that. You know, we use Techroll, and there's a lot of instructions on there in fine writing. And if you got to dig it out and figure out what the correct concentration is and do that appropriately, and if you're going to do all that work, you got to change those dips every single day. Have you frequently, forget it. Just do it daily. Clean them every day at the end of the day. So, because the more organic matter you have in there, it's just not going to work, and you might even be doing more spreading than disinfecting. So again, things to avoid, obviously the foot traffic in the farm. Visitors, that's a great one. You can ban visitors for a while. Yeah, keep foot traffic down that way. Blowers, I touched on that. Pressure washing, I touched on that as well. We've all gone over the PPE. One thing I did find interesting was this year, obviously, as well, and coronavirus has been great because everyone's a bit more aware of biosecurity and they're more comfortable talking about it and practicing it. But as a result of that, I could only order 2 boxes of large latex gloves a week, which when you have so many folds, and we had a lot of seasonal folds too, that we were implementing the same precautions on another farm. So we're flying through gloves. So what we're going to do, just hand sanitizer. So same thing, can't get gloves, and actually sometimes it's even more convenient just to hand sanitize in and out rather than putting gloves on all the time. Dedicated staff, yeah, I've touched on. I had one girl that was super, and I just trusted her to do all the biosecurity stuff as regards cleaning the foaling stall and disinfecting the high traffic areas. Because it's hard to drill into people, and if you start trusting, do you trust? If you start having other people do it, is it getting done right? Probably not. So we had one person we really trusted to do it, and she took it on, and she was a girl on a mission. She enjoyed it. She might not have enjoyed it by the end of May, but yeah, having someone that really buys into it and gets after it and sets an example for everybody else. So we do have a language barrier on the farm as well also, so that's difficult to deal with, but you know, people learn by doing. And if everyone leads by example, they'll buy into it. And it's tricky too, because biosecurity can peel a lot of people off, and you got to be careful because it's hard to get staff, especially if you're on a shoestring budget like ours, and we didn't want to bug anyone, but we found just by leading by example, and then everybody else started to follow on, and it was never an argument. We never had to ram biosecurity down anyone's throats. Everyone just bought into the same program. I've got to touch on this amazing vacuum machine here that you can see on this slide and in here in the corner. I think the good fellas from Central Equipment are here today. So this is an example of one that they actually use in New Bolton veterinary clinic. And it's great because it doesn't blow any of the, you know, instead of using a conventional leaf blower, it's not aerosolizing everything into the air. It's vacuuming up, you know, the residue on your barn floor, and it sits in a little bag, and you then remove the bag and dump that in a safe place. Other one, I'll do that again. Oh, there's a cute little video of it in action. Let's do that up there. Yeah, your disinfectants, bleach. Bleach is a good disinfectant running under air conditions. None of those are found in horse barns. So yeah, it's probably great for your kitchen floor or maybe your tack room floor. Oh, mine's different. There you go. Yeah, bleach, great for kitchens, great for your tack room floor, but not the barn, because on porous materials like the cinder block or wood that a lot of these barns have, it's not going to penetrate. And we have disinfectant greater than, or compared with detergents. So basically what I got from this information was, your alcohols, alkalized aldehydes, and so on were costly, toxic, and inactivated by organic material. And that goes back to before you disinfect these stalls, scrub them, clean them. Because if you're just throwing disinfectant on there, you're wasting your time. This is found out, yeah. So the phenols and peroxidine compounds are what you need to look for when you're shopping for your disinfectants. Go to some common ones here. Virkon, Rescue, and Tektrol, which is what we use. But again, make sure you read the instructions good and figure out the right concentrations before you start using them in your barns, or you will find you will burn your shoes up to bits. So in summary, yeah, try and encourage everyone to get on board. Lead by example. Don't ram biosecurity down anyone's throats, because they're just going to end up resenting you. Use your resources rightly. And yeah, don't be afraid to ask visitors to stay away for the sake of votes. All right, I'll defer back to Dr. Emma Adam.
Thank you. Well done. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And I think that's a very important consideration when we often think that